in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds, I'm going to attempt to talk to you about the generational theories of two historians, Strauss and Howe. They wrote a book called The Fourth Turning, and what we're going to look at today especially is their predictions about how boomers as a generation are going to change as they grow into later life. So the generational archetype cycle that Strauss and Howe discovered has repeated itself every 80 to 100 years throughout Anglo-American history. And the reason it's really important is it can help us understand what's happening to boomers and other generations as they move into later stages of their lives. So this is a very macro-generational cycle we're talking about. And the important thing is that where you're born is the generation you stay in. Just like if you are born a boomer, you die a boomer. If you're born between 1943 and 1960, you're in the prophet generation, and that's where you stay throughout your life. So this maps to Anglo-American history really well, but oddly to Star Wars too. So I'm going to walk you through, I know, it's great. I'm going to walk you through the attributes of each generation and the legacy that these archetypal generations leave, but keep an eye on the Star Wars characters to help you kind of process it since we're doing this really, really fast. So our first generation we're going to talk about is what Strauss and Howe call the artist generations. When you see them in a positive light, they are caring, open-minded, and expert. In a negative, they're sentimental, contemplating, and indecisive. And the legacy that they leave to society is a pluralism, due process, and expertise. The current one is the silent generation. These are faces of the artist generation as it's appeared throughout history as the cycle has renewed itself. So you have First Lady Dolly Madison, Lewis and Clark, Teddy Roosevelt, and currently you've got Colin Powell and Madeleine Albright, and of course, C-3PO and R2-D2. I honestly find these generations easier to understand with the Star Wars characters. So our next generation we're looking at, and we're going to focus on a lot in the next couple of minutes, is the prophet generation, currently the boomers. If you like them, they're principled, resolute, and creative. If you don't like them, they're narcissistic, presumptuous, and ruthless. But what they leave to society is vision, values, and religion. So let's look at the prophets throughout history. You have King Henry VIII, Abraham Lincoln, a fan over here, okay, Andrew Jackson, that's Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Bill Clinton, and of course, Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. We have good and the bad in every generation. I think that sounded like Battlestar Galactica just then. The nomad generation is the next in the cycle. That's Gen X, or the 13th generation, as Strauss and Howe call them. If you like them, positive, savvy, and perceptive. Practical. If you don't, negative is the unfeeling, uncultured, and amoral, and what they leave to society is liberty, survival, and humor. And if you don't recognize all the faces in the next two, that's okay. So throughout time, you have Queen Elizabeth I, George Washington, Mark Twain, and Mae West, Jon Stewart, and of course, Han Solo and Chewbacca. And every Gen Xer I know gets really happy when you show them that Han Solo picture. We're awfully proud of that. So the next one we're going to look at is the hero generation. Currently, that's the Millennials. That tends to get a giggle when I say that. If you like them, they're selfless, rational, and competent. If you don't, they're unreflective, mechanistic, and overbold. But what they're going to leave to society is community, affluence, and technology. And how many of those faces can you tell who they are? So throughout history, as this generation has appeared, you have Puritan Cotton Mather, you have Thomas Jefferson, JFK, and Betty Friedan, and that's Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, and of course, the archetypal heroes, Luke and Leia. And remember how whiny and annoying they were in the first movie. So, okay, why do we care? Can you tell I'm not a millennial? So why do we care? Well, major thing is, if we keep treating boomers or any generation like they are who they were, our messages are really not going to hit the mark. We're still all showing glory shots of the 60s every time we want to connect with boomers. Do you really want to be reminded of what you did at 20 every time you look in a magazine? So let's look at we're going to walk through sort of the experience of the boomers for about the last 40 years. So let's start in the 60s, sex, drugs, rock and roll. We have everything from Elvis on to Woodstock, Saturday Night Fever, Elvis, Fighting the Man. Somehow, those people became the yuppies of the 80s. I would like you to tell me how you did that. Big hair, fast cars, fat wallets. I don't understand how did you do that? So this was the era of Gordon Gekko and Wall Street, and it was really about the biggest payoff as fast as possible. Well, somehow we went from that to what's kind of happening now over the last 10 years, which is mid to late middle life, late spiritual careers. I'm quitting that corporate job and I'm going to teach holistic body-mind medicine, fighting aging with everything they are worth. I am not growing old. So that leads to the question of where are boomers going? Where is this profit generation going? This seems to be the image that I see everywhere. Either they're going to be just like the seniors of the past, playing shuffleboard on their Wii now instead of out on the courts, or they're going to be on Dancing with the Stars, popping Viagra, and having lots of Botox. Neither's a pretty picture. But according to Strauss and Howe, there's a really, really different thing that's going to happen. They're going to become authoritarian, severe, and unyielding. They're going to take up the mantle of the mentors of values and ideals, embracing and glorifying their age as much as they held on to their youth, and really pushing for civic values. So what that basically means is don't ask them to compromise. They're going to have everything. If you want them to go green, tell them to shop at Whole Foods and buy their clean diesel SUV, because that's the best way. And in healthcare, we really need to start focusing on treating the whole patient. That benefits profile better outweigh the side effects because they want everything. And in our communications, we need to move from nostalgia to aspiration again. Stop just telling them who they were and honor who they are today. Lauren Hutton on the cover of J. Crew in the last year. We need to really start talking to them about what it's like to be the healthiest 65-year-old and not being 30. So that's my flyby of all of that. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them later. Thank you very much.